What was the biggest fear of the first humans? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this. You are standing at the edge of a fire. It is small, barely enough to hold back the dark. Around you, the African savanna stretches out in every direction, and beyond the ring of light, there is nothing, just sound. The low creak of dry grass, something shifting its weight in the distance. You cannot see it. You only know it is there because the silence changed. You pull your knees closer to your chest. The fire pops. Someone nearby stirs in their sleep. And in that moment, every nerve in your body is tuned to the same frequency. The ancient, wordless signal that has no name, but that every human who has ever lived has felt in exactly this way. Not danger, not pain, something older than both, fear. The question is, what were they actually afraid of? If you went back 300,000 years and sat beside that fire, what would keep the first humans awake at night? What made their hearts pound, their palms sweat, their eyes scan the dark? Most people assume the answer is simple: predators. And they're not wrong, but they're not entirely right either, because the biggest fear ancient humans carried wasn't waiting for them in the dark outside the fire. It was sitting right there beside them. Let's start with what the bones tell us. The fossil record from sites across Africa and Europe is filled with evidence of violence between humans and the animals they shared the world with. Leopard bite marks have been found on the skulls of early hominids at sites like Swartkrans in South Africa, the animal dragging its prey into a tree the way leopards still do today. Hyena gnaw marks appear on bones throughout the archaeological record, suggesting that early humans were not always the hunters. Sometimes they were the meal. The world these people moved through was not a world they dominated. Homo sapiens 300,000 years ago were physically unremarkable animals. No claws, no speed, no armor. What they had was fire, cooperative group behavior, and a brain that could anticipate threats before they arrived. But fire went out. Groups got separated, and the brain, for all its power, is also the organ that generates dread, not just in response to what is happening, but in response to what might happen. Darkness was a particularly acute terror, not as metaphor, as a literal, practical danger. Every predator that posed a serious threat to early humans, leopards, cave hyenas, cave lions, was significantly more capable in low light than we were. The human eye is a daytime instrument. We are not built for the dark. And so, when the sun went down, the calculus of survival shifted dramatically against us. There is a reason humans have maintained fire continuously for at least 400,000 years. Not just for warmth, not just for cooking, for light, for the visible perimeter between us and what hunts us. The fire wasn't a luxury. It was the border of the world. Starvation was the other great physical terror. Archaeological evidence from drought periods in East Africa shows populations collapsing, groups fragmenting, migration routes becoming desperate rather than seasonal. The kind of hunger that kills is not the inconvenience of a skipped meal. It is weeks of weakening, of watching children lose weight, of the slow realization that the land has nothing left to give. Bones from these periods carry the marks of nutritional stress. Lines in the enamel of teeth called hypoplasia formed during periods when growth was disrupted by malnutrition. These are not rare findings. They are everywhere. Hardship was not occasional. It was structural. So, yes, the dark, the predator in it, the empty stomach, these were real. These were constant. These shaped the body and the brain in ways we are still living with. But here is what the anthropologists found when they started looking more carefully. In the 1970s, a researcher named Nicholas Blurton Jones began studying the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last surviving hunter-gatherer groups whose lifestyle offers a window into how our ancestors may have lived. He documented something that changed how researchers thought about prehistoric psychology. The single most distressing event in Hadza social life was not an animal attack. It was not illness or drought or even the death of a loved one. It was exclusion from the group, being cast out, being left behind, being told in whatever words or gestures the group used that you were no longer one of us. And this makes complete sense when you understand the arithmetic of early human survival. A lone human on the African savanna 200,000 years ago was not a functioning unit. They were a liability. Without the group, its collective hunting, its shared fire, its combined memory of where water could be found in dry season, A single adult might survive weeks, maybe a month. Then, with mathematical certainty, they would die, not from one dramatic predator attack, from the slow accumulation of everything that the group had been absorbing on their behalf. The group was not a comfort. The group was the technology, and the brain registered this. It registered it at a level far below conscious thought. Social rejection in neuroscientific studies today activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex, a region involved in processing bodily harm, lights up identically whether someone breaks a bone or gets excluded from a social group. This is not a metaphor. The brain treats social death and physical death as the same category of threat because for most of human history, they were. This is why the fear of being judged is so disproportionate to its actual danger today. It is why public speaking still ranks above death in surveys of what people fear most. It is why social media rejection, a stranger not liking a photograph, can feel at a physiological level like an emergency. Your brain was not calibrated for the modern world. It was calibrated for the savannah. And on the savannah, when people stopped looking at you with warmth, the clock started. Shame was not a moral invention. It was a survival mechanism. The blush, the averted gaze, the collapsing posture, these are signals of submission, of I acknowledge I violated the group's rules and I am reducing myself to ask to stay. Every culture on Earth has versions of these signals, not because they were taught, because they were built. Now, here is the part that should feel genuinely strange. You are not living on that savannah. The predators that hunted your ancestors are gone or in zoos. You will almost certainly not starve, and yet the fears they produced are still in you, not as memories, but as wiring. The amygdala, the small almond-shaped region deep in the brain that processes fear responses, cannot distinguish between a leopard in the dark and a social media notification at 2 a.m. Both activate the threat detection system. Both trigger cortisol, heightened alertness, the narrowing of attention. Evolution moves slowly, culture moves fast, and in the gap between them, a lot of modern suffering lives. People who are terrified of the dark are not being irrational. Their brain is running software written for an environment where darkness genuinely killed. People who lie awake rehearsing something embarrassing they said 3 years ago are not weak. They are running the same social monitoring program that helped their ancestors stay included in a group where inclusion meant life. People who feel physically ill before a job interview, a first date, a difficult conversation, they are not broken. They are running ancient code in a world the code was never designed for. The biggest fear of the first humans was not a single thing. It was a system, a layered, interlocking architecture of dread built to keep a fragile, unarmored, socially dependent animal alive long enough to reproduce. The dark, the hunger, the predator, and underneath all of it, running quietly and continuously, do not get left behind, do not lose the group, do not become alone. Here is what I find remarkable about that. These people were afraid, genuinely, viscerally, constantly afraid, and they made jewelry anyway. They painted horses on cave walls by firelight anyway. They carved flutes from bone and played music in the dark anyway. The fear did not stop them from being human. In some ways, it may have made it necessary. Because when you know, at every level of your body, that the night is dangerous and the group is precious and the morning is not guaranteed, you treat the people around you differently, you tell better stories, you make things worth looking at, you do not take the fire for granted. You were not born into a safe world, neither were they. The difference is, they knew it.